The rain had stopped only a few hours earlier, leaving the air heavy with the smell of damp earth and pine. Elara pulled her shawl closer around her shoulders as she walked through the narrow streets of the village. Mud stuck to the edges of her boots, making each step slow and awkward. She could feel their eyes on her, the villagers. Some pretended not to stare, but others didn't bother to hide their looks. Whispers followed her like shadows. There she goes. The witch's granddaughter. Always walking alone, that one. Elara kept her head down, her pale hair sliding forward like a curtain to block their gazes. She had learned long ago that answering back only made it worse. So her cheeks burned. She wanted to shout that she was no witch, only a girl who preferred silence to gossip, trees to crowded houses, honesty to false smiles. At the baker's stall she stopped to buy bread. The baker, a plump man with flour on his beard, frowned the moment she approached. He slid the loaf across the counter without meeting her eyes. "That'll be 2 coppers, he muttered. Elara handed him the coins. Their fingers brushed and he snatched his hand back as if her skin burned. She said nothing, only tucked the bread into her basket and walked away. As she moved past, she heard a woman whisper loudly to her friend, "See the way her hair shines in the light? Natural, I tell you. My grandmother always said silver hair is a bad omen." Her friend laughed nervously. "Maybe she really does talk to the trees." Elara gritted her teeth. If they only knew how exhausting it was to hear the same words every day. She had never cast a spell, never cursed anyone. But because she lived alone in the small cottage her grandmother left her, at the edge of the forest no less, people had decided she was strange. Strange was dangerous in their eyes. By the time she left the market, her heart was heavy, as though each whisper had been a stone dropped into her basket. The path home took her past the last line of cottages, where the dirt road narrowed into a trail between tall pines. The further she walked, the quieter it became. The sounds of village life, children laughing, hammers striking iron, women calling to one another, faded behind her. Instead came the soothing music of the forest, leaves dripping from the morning rain, a stream rushing somewhere nearby, the occasional call of a raven. Elara let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The tension in her shoulders eased. "Better," she murmured to herself. "Much better." The forest always welcomed her. No one here cared if her hair glinted silver in the sunlight, or if she preferred silence to chatter. The trees did not judge. Her hand rose to the pendant resting against her chest. A smooth oval stone wrapped in silver wire hung from a leather cord. It had belonged to her grandmother, the only person who had ever truly understood her. She remembered the night her grandmother had pressed it into her palm. Her grandmother's voice had been weak, the rasp of a woman close to death, yet her eyes had been piercingly clear. "The forest will protect those who protect it, Elara. Remember that. It's in your blood." At the time, Elara had not known what she meant. Now years later she still wasn't sure. But when she held the pendant she felt less alone. She touched it gently, whispering, "I miss you, grandmother." The trees rustled, a breeze passing through them though the air had been still a moment before. Elara smiled faintly. She liked to think the forest was answering. The trail under her feet grew softer, moss replacing dirt. She stepped carefully, enjoying the sensation of the springy green ground. Ahead, the forest thickened, branches weaving together to block most of the sky. Shafts of golden light slipped through the gaps, turning the damp air into a haze of glittering mist. This was her refuge. The place where whispers could not reach. And though the villagers called her outcast, here Elara felt like she belonged. Elara left the trail she had made for herself over years of wandering. The forest floor was uneven, but she knew it well enough to move with confidence. Every turn of the path brought familiarity. A moss-covered boulder shaped like a sleeping bear, a patch of ferns taller than her waist, a birch tree split by lightning long ago. At last she reached her favorite clearing. A small stream bubbled through it, winding its way around clusters of wildflowers and thorny blackberry bushes. The scent of wet earth mingled with the sweetness of blossoms. She set her basket down on a flat stone and knelt by the stream to wash her hands. The cool water slid over her skin, soothing. She splashed her face, then sat back with a sigh. "This," she whispered, "is home." The forest had its own whispers, softer than the villagers' cruel ones. Leaves brushing together. Birds calling to each other. The hum of insects. It was as if the forest spoke in a language only the patient could hear. She closed her eyes and let the sound fill her. Then she heard something different. A high-pitched cry. Her eyes flew open. She froze, listening. At first she thought it might be a bird, but it came again. A whimper, weak and pitiful. An animal in pain. Alara's heart tightened. She stood quickly, scanning the clearing. The sound came from the other side of the stream, hidden by ferns. She stepped carefully over the water, pushing aside dripping leaves until she found the source. Her breath caught. 2 tiny wolf pups lay huddled against the roots of a massive oak tree. Their fur was soft and fluffy, but unlike any wolf she had seen. It shimmered silver, glowing faintly in the dappled light. One pup whimpered, its front leg bent at a strange angle. The other nudged it with its nose, whining softly as if to comfort its sibling. "Oh, you poor things," Alara whispered, kneeling. The uninjured pup gave a surprising growl, tiny teeth bared as it stepped in front of its injured sibling. The sound was almost comical, but the determination behind it was clear. It would defend its brother or sister even against her. Alara held her hands up slowly. "It's all right. I won't hurt you." The pup stopped growling. Its amber eyes fixed on hers, so sharp, so aware, that she felt a shiver run down her spine. For a heartbeat she imagined a thread connecting them, a silent understanding. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. She was being foolish. They were only wolf pups. Still she moved slowly, pulling open her basket. She always carried supplies for foraging trips: clean cloth, herbs, water. She dipped one cloth in the stream, then reached carefully for the injured pup. The healthy one barked a warning but didn't attack. It only watched her with those unnerving eyes. Alara murmured softly as she examined the pup's leg. "Shh, easy now. I know it hurts, but I can help you." The leg was broken, but it was a clean break. She had learned enough from the village healer before the woman had stopped letting her help. With twigs for splints and cloth for wrapping she could set it. Her hands were gentle as she worked, her voice steady. She told the pups stories to distract herself from their pitiful whimpers. "My grandmother once told me that the forest has secrets. That if you listen long enough it whispers them to you. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is. Maybe you're one of those secrets." The injured pup whimpered once but didn't struggle. The other kept its watch, eyes glowing faintly in the forest light. Last, Alara sat back. "There. It's done. It should heal well, but you'll need care." She bit her lip. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't leave them here helpless. But bringing wolf pups home would only give the villagers more reason to call her a witch. As if reading her thoughts, the uninjured pup nudged its sibling gently toward her, then looked up with something almost like expectation in its gaze. Alara sighed. "All right. You win." She lifted both pups carefully into her basket, cushioning them with soft cloth. The injured one whimpered once, then nestled against its sibling. The sun was dipping lower, the forest filling with shadows. Alara shouldered her basket and started toward home. But even as she walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had been seen. Watched. Judged. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and the pendant against her chest grew warm. Somewhere behind her, deep in the trees, something large moved. Something that was not entirely wolf. The sun was sliding lower behind the treetops by the time Alara reached her cottage. It stood alone on the forest's edge, half hidden by ivy and wild roses, the stones of its walls dark with age. Smoke no longer curled from the chimney. She had let the fire die out that morning, thinking she would be gone only a short while. Now, with her basket heavier than it had ever been, she pushed open the wooden door with her shoulder and stepped inside. The cottage greeted her with its familiar hush. Shelves of dried herbs hung above the hearth, filling the air with scents of rosemary, sage, and lavender. Her grandmother's old rocking chair stood by the fire, worn smooth by years of use. A kettle sat cold on the iron hook above the ashes. Alara set the basket down near the hearth and knelt to check on the pups. They had both gone quiet during the walk, worn out by the day's events. The injured one slept fitfully, its tiny chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Its sibling lay curled around it protectively, one small paw draped over the other's back. Alara's heart softened at the sight. She reached out and stroked their fur. It was softer than she expected, silken, almost shimmering in the dim light. The silver sheen that caught her eye in the forest seemed even brighter now, as if the pups carried their own faint glow. She whispered, "What are you, little ones?" The pups didn't answer, of course. But the uninjured one opened its eyes, meeting hers again with that unsettling intelligence. For a heartbeat she felt the same strange connection as before, as if the creature understood more than it should. She shook her head quickly. "I must be tired," she muttered, pulling her hand back. The fire needed tending. She stirred the ashes, added kindling, then coaxed the flames to life. Soon the hearth glowed warmly. She laid a blanket on the floor near it, arranging it into a soft nest, then carefully transferred the pups from the basket. They whimpered at the movement but soon settled again, curling together in the folds of fabric. Elara poured goat's milk into a small dish. She dipped a cloth into it and held it to the uninjured pup's mouth. To her relief, it licked eagerly. She repeated the process with the injured one, who drank weakly at first, then with more determination. "There you go," she said softly. "That's better." As she fed them, she spoke as if to fill the silence. "My grandmother used to say animals could feel your heart more than your words. Maybe she was right. Maybe you can tell I don't mean you harm." The pups listened in their own way, ears twitching at the sound of her voice. When they finally dozed off, Elara leaned back on her heels. For the first time all day she allowed herself to breathe deeply. But with the peace came a prickle of unease. She knew what the villagers would say if they discovered wolf pups in her care. Wolves were feared, hunted when they came too near the borders. Bringing them into her home would be proof enough, in the villagers' eyes, that she was unnatural. Her hand went instinctively to the pendant at her throat. It felt warm against her skin. "Would you approve, grandmother?" she whispered. "Or have I just brought trouble to my doorstep?" The fire popped in the hearth, and for a moment she imagined her grandmother's voice answering, as it sometimes did in her memories. "The forest will protect those who protect it." She closed her eyes. "I hope you're right." That night, Elara moved about her cottage restlessly. She cooked a simple meal of rabbit stew, but her appetite was gone after a few bites. The pups stirred occasionally, letting out small yips or sighs. Each sound made her glance over, half fearing they would vanish like a dream. When she finally settled into her bed, she found she could not sleep. Shadows from the fire flickered across the walls. She turned over again and again, her thoughts refusing to quiet. What had she seen in the forest today? Two strange creatures glowing faintly with silver light, and a connection she couldn't explain. It wasn't natural. Or maybe it was natural, just not human. That thought clung to her as she drifted at last into uneasy sleep. Elara woke with a start sometime in the middle of the night. The fire had burned low, painting the room in dull orange. The pups were still nestled together, their tiny bodies rising and falling peacefully. But something felt wrong. The air seemed heavier than before, thick enough to press against her chest. Every instinct told her she was not alone. Slowly she sat up and turned toward the window. The shutters were closed, but faint light leaked through the cracks, moonlight. She rose, her bare feet silent on the floor, and pushed one shutter open just a little. At first she saw only trees. The forest loomed dark and familiar, branches etched silver by the moon. Nothing unusual. Then a shadow moved. Elara's breath caught. A massive figure stood just beyond the clearing. At first glance it seemed a wolf, but larger, impossibly larger, its shoulders nearly level with her chest even at a distance. Its fur shimmered in the moonlight, darker than midnight but edged with silver. And its eyes, blue. Not the blue of sky or water, but something colder, sharper. They glowed faintly, catching the moonlight with an eerie gleam. The creature did not move closer. It only stood there watching her. Elara gripped the windowsill to steady herself. She should have been terrified. By all the villagers' tales, wolves meant death. Wolves this size belonged in stories meant to frighten children. And yet she could not look away. There was power in that gaze, yes, but not only danger. Something else stirred beneath it. Recognition. Her pendant grew warmer, almost hot against her skin. She pressed her hand over it, her heart hammering. "Who are you?" she whispered. The wolf did not answer. It only tilted its head slightly, as if studying her in return. For a long moment they remained like that, woman and beast, divided by a small window but bound by something unseen. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the wolf melted back into the shadows. One moment its blue eyes pierced the dark, the next the trees swallowed it whole. Elara stood frozen, staring at the place it had been. Her breath came fast and shallow, her skin prickling. Slowly she turned back to the room. The pups stirred in their blanket nest, one letting out a soft whine in its sleep. She knelt beside them, her fingers brushing their fur, needing the grounding comfort of touch. "You're safe," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she was saying it to them or to herself. The injured pup opened its eyes briefly, gazing at her with that same unnerving awareness. The same eyes that seemed to mirror the blue glow she had seen outside. Elara swallowed hard. She whispered, "What have I gotten myself into?" Sleep refused to return that night. Every creak of the cottage, every rustle of leaves outside, set her nerves on edge. When dawn finally came, pale and cold, she rose with relief. The pups were awake, hungry, their energy strangely stronger than before. She fed them carefully, but her eyes kept drifting toward the window. And when she stepped outside to fetch water from the well, she froze. A rabbit lay on the doorstep. Its body was limp, neck cleanly broken, the fur still warm. No blood, no torn flesh. A gift, or a warning. Elara lifted her gaze to the treeline. The forest stood quiet, but her skin prickled as though unseen eyes still lingered. She whispered, "Someone knows." And deep in her heart, she knew the massive wolf with glowing eyes would return. Elara was slicing potatoes when the sound came. 3 sharp taps. Not on her door. On the window. She froze, the knife halfway through a potato. Her heart thudded so loud she thought it might echo through the cottage. No one ever knocked at her window. No one dared come this far into the woods unless they needed herbs, and then they always used the door, hesitant, fearful, clutching their baskets as though the very walls of her home might curse them. The sound was different. Confident. Measured. Her pulse quickened. Slowly, as though any sudden movement might shatter the fragile air, she turned. And saw him. A face stared in at her through the small window pane. The man's features were striking. Too sharp, too flawless, as if carved from stone. His cheekbones were high, his jaw strong, shadowed with stubble. A few strands of raven-black hair had fallen across his forehead, though most of it framed his face in wild, tangled waves. But it was his eyes that held her still. Blue. The same cold, luminous blue she had seen the night before in the forest. Her breath caught. It couldn't be. The man didn't move, didn't blink. He simply watched her through the glass with that steady, unsettling gaze. The pups by the fire perked up suddenly, their tiny ears pricking. The uninjured one let out a small, excited yip, its tail wagging furiously. The sound broke the spell. Elara dropped the knife with a clatter and stumbled backward, her chest heaving. The man's lips curved, not into a smile but into something like recognition. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted a hand and tapped the glass once more. The sound echoed through the cottage like a command. Elara swallowed hard. He should scream. She should run. She should bar the door and throw salt across the threshold like her grandmother used to mutter about when she spoke of forest spirits. But instead she found herself moving forward. Step by trembling step until she stood before the window. "Who are you?" Her voice was little more than a whisper. The man tilted his head slightly, studying her as though weighing the question. Then in a voice low and rough he said, "Open the door." Elara's skin prickled. No. The faintest flicker of amusement passed over his face, but his eyes never softened. "You already invited me when you took what was mine." Her breath caught. The pups. His gaze shifted briefly toward the small bundle of fur on the blanket, then back to her. "Open the door," he repeated, "or I will open it myself." The certainty in his tone made her shiver. She glanced at the pups. The uninjured one yipped again, wriggling with obvious delight at the man's presence. Her instincts screamed against it, but something deeper, something she couldn't name, pushed her forward. She went to the door, her hands shaking as she lifted the latch. The door creaked open, and there he was. He filled the doorway, taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, cloaked in something that looked like fur but shimmered with a silver sheen unlike any animal she knew. The scent of pine and earth clung to him, sharp and wild. "You," she breathed, though whether it was accusation or recognition she couldn't say. The man stepped inside without asking permission. The small cottage seemed to shrink around him, his presence filling every corner. The air felt charged as though lightning had struck nearby. Elara backed away instinctively, pressing her hand against the pendant at her chest. "You have something that belongs to me," he said again, his gaze flicking toward the pups. Elara's chin lifted despite her fear. They were alone. One of them was hurt. "I couldn't just leave them." His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing her with a predator's focus. "Most humans would have." "I'm not most humans." The words slipped out before she could stop them. For the first time something flickered across his face. Surprise maybe, or curiosity. He tilted his head, the gesture eerily reminiscent of the way the pups had watched her. "No," he said slowly. "You are not." The pups scrambled to their feet, whining with excitement. The man's harsh features softened almost imperceptibly as he crouched beside them. His large hands moved with unexpected gentleness as he examined the injured one's splinted leg. "You set the bone," he observed. Elara hovered a few steps away, clutching her apron in both hands. "I've helped the village healer before. I know a little." "Skillfully done," he murmured. He stroked the pup's fur, his voice dropping into something that sounded almost like affection. The injured pup whined softly, then licked his hand. Elara stared. This man, this stranger, radiated danger, yet the pups adored him. "They're yours," she said. It wasn't a question. A shadow crossed his expression. "Their mother was killed. Hunters from beyond the eastern ridge. I was tracking them when these two wandered from the den." His voice carried both grief and rage, though both were carefully contained. Elara's throat tightened. She thought of the massive wolf she had seen watching her cottage. "You're not?" She hesitated, unsure how to phrase the impossible thought. He looked up at her, a corner of his mouth curving in something not quite a smile. "Not quite human. Not merely wolf." The words sent a shiver down her spine. He rose to his full height again, towering over her. Despite the daylight streaming through the window, something of the night clung to him, an aura of wildness that refused to be tamed. "What do your people say of the deep forest?" he asked suddenly. Lara swallowed. "They say it's cursed. That creatures live there, creatures that are neither man nor beast." "And do you believe them?" She hesitated. "I believe the forest has secrets. My grandmother taught me to respect them." His gaze dropped to the pendant at her throat. Recognition flashed in his eyes. "That stone. It comes from the heart pool at the center of the deep forest. Few humans have ever seen it. Fewer still have been permitted to take anything from it." Elara's hand flew to the pendant protectively. It was hers. She said it would protect me. Did she now? His voice carried a new note, speculative, almost reverent. "What else did she tell you?" Elara's mind swam with memories. Her grandmother's whispered lessons, the way she seemed to sense storms before they came, her strange insistence that Elara belonged to the forest as much as it belonged to her. She said, "Someday I would understand what it meant. That I wasn't like the others." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the pup's soft whines. At last the man straightened. "My name is Kale." Elara's lips parted. The name felt heavy, ancient. "Elara. Elara," he repeated as though tasting the sound. Her name and his voice sent a strange thrill down her spine. "You saved them," he said simply. "Few of your kind would have done so." "They needed me," she replied quietly. "I couldn't leave them." His gaze lingered on her for a long moment, unreadable. Then he bent and scooped the pups into his arms. They wriggled with delight, clearly recognizing him. Elara's chest ached unexpectedly at the thought of letting them go. "Will they be all right without their mother?" she asked softly. Kale's expression flickered, something raw and vulnerable beneath the mask of strength. "The pack raises its young together. They will be cared for. But they will remember you, Elara." His blue eyes met hers with a weight that made her breath catch. "As will I." He turned toward the door, the pups cradled against his chest. She thought that would be the end of it. A strange encounter, a secret she could never tell. But at the threshold he paused and looked back at her. "The forest remembers those who show it kindness," he said, echoing her grandmother's words so closely that her heart jolted. "I will return tomorrow at dawn." Her throat tightened. "For what?" His eyes gleamed, catching the light in a way no human eyes should. "To make a choice." And then he was gone. The next morning Elara rose early. She had barely slept, tossing and turning as her mind replayed the events of the previous day. The memory of Kale's blue eyes lingered most of all, unsettling and magnetic at once. Her cottage was quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire and the sound of the pups breathing in their blanket nest. He watched them for a moment. The injured one stirred, stretching its splinted leg with surprising strength. The other curled closer as if to shield it. "They'll be gone soon," she whispered to herself, though the words sat heavy in her chest. She busied herself with chores, fetching water, sweeping the floor, chopping kindling. Anything to keep her thoughts from spiraling. Yet no matter how she tried to distract herself, she felt it. A presence beyond the trees, waiting. When the knock came at dawn, 3 firm, deliberate taps at her door. Her body already knew who stood there. She opened it to find Kale. The rising sun painted him in silhouette, but the light only made him more striking. Today he wore no heavy cloak, only a simple tunic of rough-spun cloth, but the wildness in him was even clearer in daylight. His posture, the way he filled the doorway, the way his eyes, those impossible eyes, fixed on her without wavering. "You're ready," he said, though it wasn't a question. Lara swallowed. "You said you would return. You didn't say why." "I will show you." His words left no room for argument. Before she could think of a protest, the pups scrambled from their nest with a flurry of whines and yips. They tumbled across the floor and pressed against Kale's legs, tails wagging. Kale crouched to greet them, his large hands stroking their silver fur. For a moment his expression softened, grief shadowing his features. "They are strong," he murmured. "They will live." Alara's throat tightened. She should have been relieved, but the thought of them leaving stung. She folded her arms. "And what of me?" Kale rose slowly, his gaze returning to her. "You are not like them," he said simply. "But neither are you like the villagers." Her pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" He studied her a long moment before answering. "Your grandmother. Tell me what she said to you." Alara hesitated. "She told me the forest would protect those who protect it. That it was in my blood." Kale's eyes narrowed, the blue in them seeming to flare. "And she gave you the heartstone." Alara touched the pendant at her chest instinctively. "Yes, it was hers. She said it would protect me." "It is not a charm," Kale said quietly. "It is a mark. A sign of belonging." "Belonging to what?" Kale stepped closer, and though his voice was calm, it carried the weight of a revelation. "Your grandmother was one of us. She was Pack." The words struck Alara like a blow. She shook her head. "No. That's impossible." "Is it?" Kale asked. "Think of what you know. Her strength even in old age. Her senses. The way animals trusted her. The way she taught you to listen to the forest as though it spoke." Alara's lips parted, but no sound came. The memories surged. Her grandmother's uncanny awareness of visitors before they arrived. The way she moved with a grace no frail woman should have. The way she spoke of the forest as if it were alive. "No," Alara whispered, but her voice shook. Kale's gaze never wavered. "She was wolf-blooded. And so are you." Her knees felt weak. She gripped the edge of the table for balance. "That's why I feel different. Why the villagers? Why they fear you," Kale finished. Even without knowing why. The room seemed to tilt. Alara pressed her hand to her chest, her heartbeat wild beneath the pendant. Kale stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Your blood calls to ours. That is why the pups accepted you. That is why I saw you in the dark and knew you were not just human." Alara stared at him, her breath shallow. "And what does that mean for me?" Kale's lips curved into something caught between a smile and a warning. "It means you have a choice to make." The words lingered in the air long after Kale spoke them. "A choice." Lara shook her head. "I don't understand." Kale moved past her, crouching to gather the pups again. They wriggled happily in his arms, nuzzling his chest. He stood, his gaze steady on her. "You are wolf-blooded, Alara. The heartstone marks you as kin. You may remain human, living as you have, alone at the edge of the village. Or you may claim what sleeps within you." Her stomach clenched. "Claim?" "The wolf," Kale said simply. The word struck something deep inside her, a part of her that had always longed for more than whispers and isolation. But fear rose just as quickly. "And if I choose not to?" she asked. Kale inclined his head slightly. "Then you remain as you are. We will leave you in peace." but you will never again walk the forest without knowing what you turned away from. Elara bit her lip. And if I choose yes? His blue eyes burned brighter. Then you come with me. Into the deep forest. To the heart pool. It will awaken your blood. The silence that followed pressed heavy between them. Elara turned away, gripping the edge of the table. This is madness. Is it? Kale's voice was low, insistent. You've always felt apart. Always longed for something beyond the village walls. Your grandmother prepared you for this. She knew. Her throat tightened. The pendant against her skin pulsed with warmth, as though agreeing. She turned back to him, anger flaring as much at herself as at him. And what if I don't want your world? What if I just want my life as it was? Kale studied her, his expression unreadable. Then you may keep it. But you called the choice madness because you already know the truth. Your life has never been enough. You have always been waiting for this. His certainty left her breathless. The pups squirmed in his arms, one licking his chin, the other looking toward her with those intelligent eyes. Her chest ached. Kale shifted them gently, his tone softening. You saved what was mine. For that you have my gratitude. But gratitude is not why I returned. I returned because the forest has claimed you. Because you belong to both worlds, and now you must decide which one you will live in. Elara stared at him, her mind a storm of fear, longing, disbelief, and a strange, dangerous hope. When, she whispered. Kale's gaze locked on hers, unblinking. At dawn tomorrow. I will come for you. Be ready. Her heart thudded painfully. Ready for what? His lips curved slightly, though his eyes remained cold fire. To choose. He turned then, striding to the door. The pups whined, reluctant to leave, but he murmured something soft in a language she didn't understand, and they quieted. At the threshold he paused. His gaze swept over her one last time. Do not fear what you are, Elara. Fear only turning away from it. And then he was gone, vanishing into the morning light as though the forest itself had swallowed him whole. Elara stood frozen, her hands trembling, the silence of the cottage deafening. She pressed her fingers to her grandmother's pendant. It was warm again, pulsing faintly against her skin. Her voice shook as she whispered into the emptiness. What am I supposed to do? The only answer was the rustle of the trees outside, whispering as if they already knew her choice. The morning was cool when Elara stepped out of her cottage. Mist clung to the ground, curling around her boots as if reluctant to let her go. The pendant at her chest pulsed faintly with warmth, its steady beat matching the rhythm of her heart. Kale was waiting. He stood at the tree-line, tall and unyielding, the rising sun haloing his figure in pale gold. Today he wore dark leather, fitted close to his body, and his wild black hair was tied back at the nape of his neck. Even from a distance he radiated power, as if the forest bent around him rather than the other way around. You came, he said when she approached. Elara tried to keep her voice steady. I said I would. No, Kale corrected, his eyes gleaming faintly. You feared you would. But you came anyway. That matters. She didn't know how to answer that. Instead she lifted her chin. Where are we going? To the heart of the forest. To my people. Her stomach twisted. And if they don't want me there? His gaze lingered on her, steady as always. Then they'll have to answer to me. That should have reassured her, but it only made her heart pound harder. He turned without another word, striding into the trees with a silence so perfect that even the leaves seemed unwilling to betray his passage. Elara hesitated for only a moment before hurrying after him. The forest grew denser with every step. The air thickened, rich with the scent of moss, pine, and something sharper she couldn't name. Shafts of sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting shifting patterns across the forest floor. They walked for hours, Kale always a few steps ahead, his stride long and unyielding. Elara found herself watching the way he moved, fluid, powerful, like a predator who never doubted his place in the world. Finally, Kale lifted a hand, signaling her to stop. Listen. Elara held her breath. At first all she heard was the usual forest sounds. The whisper of leaves, the call of a distant bird, the murmur of water somewhere nearby. Then she noticed it, a subtle shift beneath the surface of sound. A silence too deliberate. We're not alone, she whispered. Kale glanced back, approval flickering in his eyes. No. We are not. Shapes moved between the trees. Wolves, larger than any she had ever seen, emerged from the shadows, their coats glinting in shades of silver, black and russet. Their eyes, intelligent and sharp, fixed on her with unnerving focus. Her breath caught. They circled them, silent but for the soft pad of paws on moss. Instinct screamed at her to run. Her legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand still. Kale's voice was calm. "They're my pack. My family. They are here to judge you." One wolf stepped forward, its fur a deep russet streaked with gray. Its amber eyes narrowed as it let out a low growl directed squarely at Alara. Kale's lips curved faintly as though amused. "Thorn disapproves. He thinks I am taking an unnecessary risk." Alara's heart pounded. "Is he wrong?" Kale's eyes lingered on her. "That remains to be seen." The russet wolf growled again, but after a moment, it fell back into the circle. The other wolves parted, leaving a path open before them. Kale began walking again and the wolves followed, forming a loose formation around them. Alara swallowed hard but kept moving. Every step deeper into the unknown felt like a step away from everything she had ever been. The trees thinned at last, opening onto a valley hidden deep within the forest. Alara stopped, her breath catching at the sight. Below them stretched a settlement unlike anything she had imagined. Stone structures blended seamlessly with the landscape, draped in ivy and crowned with moss, as though they had grown from the earth itself. A crystalline stream cut through the valley, glinting under the sun. People moved among the dwellings, some fully human, some wolves, and others in strange, shifting forms between. Alara's chest tightened with awe. "It's beautiful." Kale's gaze lingered on her face rather than the valley. "It is home." They descended the slope, wolves pacing beside them. Conversations faltered as they entered the settlement. Heads turned, eyes followed. Curiosity, suspicion, and outright hostility met Alara from every corner. She felt the weight of it pressing down on her, more suffocating than any whisper in the village had ever been. "They don't want me here," she murmured. "They haven't had a human guest in over 50 years, Kale said. "And never one brought at the Alpha's invitation. It will take time." Time, Alara thought grimly, she might not have. Kale led her to the largest of the stone structures, a circular hall crowned with a dome of living moss and small flowering plants. Two massive wolves stood guard at the entrance, their eyes sharp and unyielding. "Wait here," Kale said, his tone brooking no argument. "The elders wish to speak with me first." Alara's voice was tight. "Kale, what's going to happen?" He studied her for a long moment, then reached out and brushed his fingers against the pendant at her throat. The brief touch sent a jolt of warmth through her, steadying and unsettling all at once. "This stone marks you as one who belongs to both worlds," he said quietly. "The elders will want proof of what I already know." Then he turned and disappeared inside, leaving her alone under the scrutiny of the guards, and the dozens of eyes watching from a distance. Alara resisted the urge to fidget. Weakness wouldn't help her now. She straightened her spine and lifted her chin. The russet wolf, Thorn, sat nearby, his amber eyes locked on her. She swallowed and whispered, "I saved them. I meant no harm." Thorn's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Still, something in his posture eased, if only slightly. From inside the hall voices rose, low at first, then sharp, heated, though the words were in a language Alara couldn't understand. Her name was mentioned several times, each time followed by muttering. She clenched her fists. The waiting stretched endlessly. Sunlight shifted across the clearing, her nerves wound tighter and tighter. At last the voices fell silent. The great stone doors opened. Kale emerged, followed by 3 figures, 2 women and 1 man, their garments simple but embroidered with symbols Alara didn't recognize. They were old, their faces lined with age, but they moved with surprising vigor. Their eyes glowed faintly blue like Kale's, though dimmer, as though time had banked their fire. "Alara," Kale said formally. "These are the elders of the Silverfang pack. They have agreed to witness." Her throat was dry. "Witness what?" The oldest woman stepped forward, her sharp gaze cutting into Alara. "You wear the heartstone," she said. "Given to you by one of our blood." "My grandmother," Alara said, her voice trembling. "It was hers. Her most treasured possession." The elder nodded. "As it should be. I gave it to her myself when she chose to leave our pack." Alara's world tilted. "What?" Your grandmother, the woman said, her tone matter-of-fact, was Lyra of the Silverfang pack. My daughter. Alara's knees nearly buckled. Her grandmother, her gentle, wise grandmother, had been one of them. Not a villager. Not even fully human. The elder's gaze softened slightly. She left for love. It happens. But she carried our blood, as do you. Alara's voice shook. That makes me quarter blood, the male elder supplied. Usually not enough to trigger the change. But sometimes when the bloodline is strong. His gaze flicked toward Kale, something unspoken passing between them. Alara's thoughts raced. Memories of her grandmother teaching her to walk silently, to sense storms before they came, to listen to the forest as if it spoke. All of it suddenly made sense. That's why the pups responded to me, she whispered. Why I felt connected. Kale's voice was quiet. That is why I came to your cottage. Because I sensed what you were. What you could be. The second female elder, gentler than the others, stepped forward. You have a choice, Alara. To remain as you are, human kin but separate, or to claim your heritage and join the pack. Alara's heart pounded. The air felt charged, humming against her skin. Her grandmother's pendant pulsed with warmth as though urging her forward. How? She asked, her voice barely audible. Kale answered. Through the heart pool. The source of our power. But it is dangerous. Without an anchor, your human blood may not survive the change. Her gaze locked on his. And the anchor would be you. He nodded once. As Alpha, I can forge a bond strong enough to tether you. But such a bond is not easily broken. It would tie your life to mine. Alara's breath caught. A choice. Her old life. Or this new, wild, terrifying one. And Kale at the center of it. The oldest elder's voice cut through her thoughts. You have until sunset. Then the moon will rise and the heart pool will call. Decide before then. Alara looked from the elders to Kale, to the valley stretching around her, alive with wolves and whispers. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. The forest will protect those who protect it. It's in your blood. And for the first time in her life, Alara felt the truth of it. The valley was alive with movement. Alara followed Kale through the settlement, her senses flooded by sights she could hardly process. Wolves shifted into humans before her eyes, their forms rippling like water. Children tumbled in play, some with fur and tails, others with bare skin and bright laughter. Women carried baskets of herbs, their arms strong, their gazes sharp. Men honed blades or stacked firewood, their movements efficient, almost too graceful to be entirely human. And everywhere eyes followed her. Some were merely curious, wide and wondering. Others narrowed with distrust, lips curling in faint growls. The air seemed heavy with judgment, as if every step she took was weighed. Alara kept her chin high, though her stomach knotted. They don't want me here. They don't know you yet, Kale replied. His stride never faltered, long and certain, as though he walked the Valley of Kings. And some never will. His bluntness stung, but she didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. A small group of young wolves, half-shifted, their eyes glowing faintly, watched from a cluster of stones. One of them hissed something under his breath. Alara caught only a word. Which? Her chest tightened. Even here in this hidden world, the whispers followed her. Kale's head turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. The young wolves fell instantly silent under his gaze, their bravado crumbling. He didn't speak, but the weight of his disapproval was enough to scatter them. Alara exhaled shakily. They think I don't belong. They are right, Kale said, and when she looked up in shock, he added, not yet. Before she could respond, a familiar yip sounded. She turned just in time to see the two silver pups barreling toward her, their paws thudding against the earth. Her heart lifted. You're safe. She crouched, arms open. The pups collided with her, licking her hands, nipping at her hair. She laughed despite the tension, stroking their silky coats. The injured one bounded as though it had never been hurt, healed completely. They remember you, Kale said, his voice softer. Alara smiled faintly, pressing her cheek to the smaller pup's head. And I them. But when she looked up, she saw more eyes watching, this time with sharper intensity. A few women whispered behind their hands. One older wolf scowled openly, muttering in a language she couldn't understand. The pups didn't seem to notice. They circled her legs, tails wagging, their joy uncomplicated. Elara stood, brushing the dirt from her skirt. They trust me. Why can't the rest of them? Because trust is earned, Kale said simply. And because you carry human blood. Her throat tightened. But so did my grandmother. And she chose another path. She left. His gaze flicked to her pendant, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. But you are still here. And now you must choose differently or not at all. The weight of his words pressed down on her. Before she could answer, another figure approached. It was Thorn, the russet wolf who had growled at her earlier. In human form, he was broad-shouldered, his amber eyes sharp beneath a mane of brown hair streaked with gray. He stopped a few paces away, his arms folded across his chest. "This is foolishness," Thorn said, his voice low but firm. "She does not belong here, Kale." Kale turned to face him. "You question my judgment. I question your risk," Thorn snapped. "You bring her among us, flaunt her before the pack and expect us to accept her? She is human." His gaze slid to Elara, hard and unyielding. "Or close enough." Heat flared in Alara's chest. "I didn't ask to be brought here." "No," Thorn said coldly. "But you did not refuse." Kale's voice dropped to a warning growl. "Enough." Thorn's lips curled in a faint sneer, but he stepped back. "If she fails, it will not be only her blood that suffers. Remember that." He turned and strode away, his shoulders tense. Lara's hands shook. "He hates me." "He fears you," Kale corrected. "There is a difference." She stared after Thorn, then at Kale. "Do you?" Kale's expression was unreadable. "I do not fear what I understand." Her pulse skipped. The way he said it made her chest tighten in a way she didn't want to name. "Come," he said abruptly. "It is time you saw where your choice will be made." They left the settlement behind, following the stream that wound deeper into the valley. The pups trotted at their heels, darting ahead then circling back, their joy a stark contrast to the heavy silence between Elara and Kale. The further they walked, the more the forest changed. The trees grew taller, their trunks thick enough that 3 men might not wrap around them. The air grew dense, humming with energy. The scent of pine sharpened, mingling with something sweet, metallic, ancient. Alara's skin prickled. "What is this place?" "The heart of our territory," Kale said. "Where the veil between forms is thinnest." They rounded a bend and Elara gasped. Before them, a waterfall plunged from a sheer cliff into a perfectly circular pool. The water glowed with a strange, luminous blue-green light, brighter than moonlight, softer than fire. The glow shimmered across the surface, casting rippling reflections onto the surrounding rocks. Elara stepped forward slowly, unable to look away. "It's alive." Kale's voice was quiet, reverent. "The heart pool. The source of our power. The gift of the forest to our kind." The pups darted to the edge, sniffing the water, their silver coats catching the light. Elara knelt beside them, dipping her hand into the pool. The water was warm, unnaturally so, and the instant it touched her skin, her pendant pulsed hot against her chest. She jerked her hand back, startled. "It knows me." Kale's gaze was steady. "It recognizes your blood." Her chest tightened. "This is where I would change?" "Yes." He stepped closer, his presence towering over her. "The heart pool awakens what sleeps in the blood. But your blood is mixed. The human in you will resist. Without an anchor you could be lost in the between place. Forever." A chill ran down her spine. "Lost." "Neither wolf nor human," Kale said softly. "A shadow. A nothing. The waters do not forgive weakness." She looked at him, fear rising like a tide. "And if I fail?" Kale's jaw tightened. "Then you die." The word hung between them, stark and merciless. Alara's throat closed. She looked back at the glowing pool, its beauty now edged with menace. Why would anyone choose this? Kale stepped closer, his voice low and fierce. "Because to choose it is to be whole. To run beneath the moon as your true self. To belong." Her heart ached at the intensity in his eyes, the certainty in his voice. He believed in this with every part of himself. "And you," she whispered. "You would be my anchor?" He nodded once. "As Alpha, I can forge a bond strong enough to tether you. But such bonds are not broken. They bind for life." Her breath caught. A mate bond. The words tasted strange on her tongue, heavy with meaning. Kale's gaze burned into hers. Yes. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. The pups pressed close to her legs, whining softly as if sensing the weight of the moment. Elara touched her pendant, the stone hot against her skin. Her grandmother's voice echoed faintly in memory. Trust your instincts above all else. She met Kale's eyes. And if I say no? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. Something sharp, almost pained. Then you return to your cottage. Live as you have. Human alone. You will be protected, but you will never be one of us. Alara's chest tightened. She turned back to the heart pool, watching the glow shimmer across its surface. Beauty and danger intertwined, promise and threat in equal measure. Her life had always been on the outside, looking in. Always half a whisper away from belonging. Now at last she stood at the edge of something vast. And the choice loomed closer than ever. The valley settled into twilight. The silver glow of the heart pool lingered in Alara's mind long after Kale had led her back to the settlement. She couldn't shake the memory of its warmth against her skin, its hum deep inside her chest as though it had recognized her. It had whispered to something within her she hadn't known was there. And it terrified her. Now, seated on the small cot in the dwelling Kale had given her for the night, she pressed her hands together to stop them from trembling. A single lantern flickered against the stone walls, throwing her shadow long and thin. Outside, the sounds of the pack drifted in, low voices, the occasional bark of laughter, the howl of wolves as they gathered for the night. She should have felt comforted by the life around her. Instead, she felt like a stranger trapped in someone else's dream. Her grandmother's words echoed relentlessly. It's in your blood. Elara closed her eyes, fighting the weight pressing down on her chest. What if she failed? What if the waters swallowed her whole? Her mind conjured the image Kale had described. A shadow caught between wolf and human, trapped in the between place, neither alive nor dead. Her stomach twisted. Could she risk that? A soft knock at the door startled her. She stood quickly, smoothing her skirt as if that might hide her unease. The door opened before she could answer. It wasn't Kale. A woman stepped inside, tall, with dark braids streaked in silver, her green eyes sharp. She carried herself with the confidence of someone respected, maybe feared. You are Elara. Her voice was cool, not unfriendly but not welcoming either. Yes, Elara said cautiously. The woman studied her. I'm Ceres. My son is Thorn. Elara stiffened. She remembered the amber-eyed wolf who had glared at her, his disdain like a blade. Ceres stepped closer, her gaze unflinching. You should know the bond Kale offers is not lightly given. Nor is the heart pool forgiving. Many have tried. Not all survived. Elara swallowed. Do you want me to refuse? Ceres's lips curved faintly. What I want is irrelevant. What matters is whether you are strong enough. If you are not, you will kill him as surely as yourself. The words chilled Elara's blood. Kill him. Ceres nodded once. The mate bond is not a chain only for you. If your blood fails, it will tear his spirit apart. Elara's knees weakened. She gripped the cot for balance. Why tell me this? She whispered. Ceres's gaze softened slightly, though her voice remained firm. Because Kale is our alpha. He carries the weight of us all. If you cannot stand with him, then walk away before it is too late. The woman turned without waiting for an answer, her presence as commanding on her way out as it had been entering. Elara sank onto the cot, trembling. Not just her life hung in the balance. Kale's did too. The weight of destiny had never felt heavier. The moon rose high before Elara stepped outside. The valley was bathed in silver, shadows stretching long across the stone dwellings. The sounds of the pack had quieted, leaving only the occasional rustle of leaves or distant howl. She walked without direction, her feet carrying her toward the stream. The pendant at her chest pulsed faintly, in time with her racing thoughts. When she reached the water's edge, she found him waiting. Kale stood with his back to her, his figure outlined against the moonlit stream. His cloak stirred in the breeze, his dark hair loose around his shoulders. Even in stillness he radiated power. He didn't turn, but his voice carried softly across the water. You should be resting. Elara hesitated, then stepped closer. I can't. Silence stretched between them. She expected him to chide her, to tell her again that fear meant nothing, that choice was all. But instead Kale said quietly, I know. He turned then, his blue eyes catching the moonlight. For once there was no command in them. Only something rawer, quieter. "You are afraid," he said. Elara lifted her chin though her voice shook. "Wouldn't you be?" His lips curved faintly. "I was." She blinked. "You?" He nodded, stepping closer. "The first time I entered the heart pool I feared it would unmake me. Even with my blood, even with my strength, I feared I would not emerge whole." Elara's breath caught. It was the first time he had spoken of himself with anything resembling vulnerability. "But you did," she said softly. "Yes. Because I had no choice." His gaze lingered on her. "But you do." The word struck her. She searched his face. "You're saying I can walk away?" "Yes." His voice was steady though something flickered in his eyes. "If you choose the human world I will not force you. You can return to your cottage. Live your life. The pack will not harm you." Her chest tightened. "And you?" His jaw tensed. "Then I will carry the weight of what might have been. Nothing more." She should have felt relief. Instead, her throat ached with something sharper. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me? Why risk yourself for someone you barely know?" Cale's eyes burned into hers, the intensity of his gaze nearly unbearable. "Because I feel it. The pull. The bond even before it is forged. I cannot explain it, but I cannot deny it." Her breath hitched. The air between them hummed with unspoken words, unacknowledged desire. Cale stepped closer, so close she felt the heat radiating from him, the wildness that clung to his skin. "But this must be your choice, Elara. Not mine. If you walk into the waters it will be because you choose to. Not because I pulled you there." Her heart thundered. Every instinct screamed that she should step back, but instead she whispered, "And if I choose you?" For the first time the alpha faltered. His breath caught, his control slipping for the barest moment. His hand lifted as though to touch her, then stopped, trembling inches from her skin. "If you choose me," he said softly, "then I will be yours. Always. Until death." The words wrapped around her like a vow, dangerous and intoxicating. The pups padded into the clearing then, bounding toward them. Their playful yips broke the heavy silence. They circled Elara's feet, tails wagging, before curling up together near the stream. Elara let out a shaky laugh. The tension eased, but only slightly. Cale's eyes lingered on her, his voice low. "Rest now, Elara. Tomorrow the moon will rise full. Tomorrow you decide." He turned away before she could answer, his figure dissolving into the shadows of the trees. Elara stood frozen, the moonlight silvering her hair, her heart a storm inside her chest. Tomorrow everything would change. The moon rose heavy and full, silvering the valley in cold light. Elara stood at the edge of the heart pool, her heart hammering like a trapped bird in her chest. The glowing water shimmered, casting pale blue light across her skin. Around the pool the pack had gathered. Dozens of wolves and men and women in shifting forms circled the clearing, their eyes fixed on her. Some gazes burned with curiosity. Others with suspicion, even hostility. But all were watching. Cale stood at her side, tall and unyielding. His cloak stirred in the wind, his eyes twin flames of ice and fire. When he spoke, his voice carried across the crowd like thunder. "Tonight, under the full moon, the heart pool calls. Tonight, Elara of Lyra's blood stands before us. She is not human alone, nor wolf alone, but of both. The forest has marked her. Now she must choose." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elara felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing down on her. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to breathe. Cale turned to her, his voice lower, meant for her alone. "This is your moment. Speak, Elara." She swallowed hard. The pendant at her chest pulsed hot, as if urging her forward. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "The forest will protect those who protect it." She lifted her chin. "I choose not to walk away. I choose the forest. I choose the wolf." A hush fell over the pack. Even the night itself seemed to still. Cale's gaze locked on hers, unblinking. "Then the bond must be forged. Without it, the waters will devour you. With it, your life and mine will be bound together. One heart, one fate, until death." Her heart pounded. The pack watched silently, the tension so thick it was almost a living thing. Cale stepped closer, his presence filling her world. "Do you accept this bond, Elara?" Her lips parted. Fear, longing, and something deeper warred inside her. She thought of her cottage, of the loneliness that had filled every corner of her life. Then she thought of the pups curled at her feet, of Kale's voice in the dark, of the way the heart pool had sung to her blood. Her voice trembled, but the words rang clear. I accept. Kale's hand rose, brushing the pendant at her throat. Then with a deliberate motion he drew a blade from his belt. A dagger with a hilt of bone and a blade that glowed faintly blue in the moonlight. Alara's breath caught. This is the blade of oath, Kale said. With blood the bond is sealed. He turned his wrist and dragged the blade across his palm. The cut was clean, the blood bright red against his skin. He held out his hand to her. Your turn. Her stomach twisted. She had cut herself many times before while chopping herbs, but this was different. This was ritual binding. Kale held her gaze, steady and unyielding. Do not fear the pain. Fear only turning back. Alara took a shaky breath and accepted the dagger. Its weight surprised her, heavier than it looked, humming faintly in her hand. She pressed the blade against her palm. It stung hot and sharp, but she forced herself to slice. Blood welled bright against her skin. The crowd murmured. Kale clasped her hand in his, their blood mingling, dripping onto the ground between them. The moment their skin touched, heat surged through her, racing up her arm, flooding her chest. Her knees buckled. She gasped, clutching his hand tighter. Kale's voice was low, fierce. Do you feel it? Yes, she whispered. Their joined hands glowed faintly, the light pulsing in time with her heartbeat. The pendant at her chest flared hot, almost burning, then steadied. Kale leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. It is done. Our bond is sealed. The pack howled as one, a sound that rose into the night like a storm breaking. Wolves threw back their heads, voices blending into a single resonant call. The ground itself seemed to vibrate with the force of it. Alara stood trembling, bound by Kale's hand, overwhelmed by the power thrumming through her veins. Kale released her slowly, his voice steady. Now comes the final step. The heart pool awaits. The water glowed brighter as Alara stepped toward the heart pool. Each ripple shimmered with unnatural light, as though the moon itself had melted into the pool. The pups whined from the edge, but Kale's sharp look kept them back. He remained at her side, his presence a shield and a promise. Alara's feet reached the water's edge. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and trembling, her eyes wide. For a moment she thought she saw them flicker gold. Kale's voice was steady beside her. Step in. Her heart thundered. She lifted one foot and placed it into the pool. Warmth spread instantly, climbing her leg, seeping into her bones. She gasped, nearly stumbling. Kale caught her elbow. Steady. She nodded, breath shaking, and stepped deeper. The water rose to her knees, then her waist. With every step, heat spread through her, sharp and insistent, like fire laced with lightning. When it reached her chest, she cried out. It burns. Kale's voice cut through the pain. Do not fight it. Let it take you. Her body convulsed. The pendant at her throat blazed, white hot. She gasped as the world spun around her. The water dragged her down, pulling her beneath the surface. She fell into silence. The glow swallowed her whole. She was floating. Darkness pressed in, but within it, voices whispered. Wolves howling. A woman's voice calling her name, her grandmother's. Alara. It is in your blood. Her body split apart. Bones cracked, reshaping. Muscles tore and rewove. She screamed, but no sound left her lips. Fire raged through her veins, scorching every nerve. She clawed for the surface, but the darkness dragged her deeper. Panic surged. She felt herself unraveling, her human form shattering into nothing. Lost, a voice whispered. You will be lost. No. Her voice was a thought, desperate and raw. I won't. But the waters tore at her, pulling, shredding, breaking. And then, his presence slammed into her, fierce and unyielding. His voice rang in her mind. Hold to me. Do not let go. Heat wrapped around her, but this time it was steady, anchoring. She clung to him as her body twisted in agony. His strength tethered her, kept her from sinking into the abyss. Breathe, Kale commanded. With me. Her chest convulsed. She gasped, though she was beneath the water, and suddenly her lungs filled with air. The fire eased, reshaping rather than destroying. Her bones lengthened, her skin rippled. Pain gave way to power. She burst upward, breaking the surface with a ragged cry. Except it wasn't a cry. It was a howl. The sound tore from her throat, wild and resonant, echoing through the clearing. Wolves answered instantly, their voices rising to join hers, filling the night with their song. Elara staggered onto the bank, trembling. She looked down and gasped. Where her hands had been, paws now pressed into the earth. Silver fur shimmered along her body, her reflection in the pool showing a wolf with eyes that burned gold. The pack howled louder, a chorus of acceptance. Kale stood before her, his blue eyes blazing. Slowly, deliberately he shifted. His body rippled, bones reshaping, until the massive black wolf from her window stood in his place. He stepped toward her, lowering his head in recognition. Their bond flared between them, a golden thread pulsing with shared life. Elara lowered her head, instinct guiding her. Their noses touched, the connection searing and undeniable. And then she ran. Her body moved with freedom she had never known, her paws eating the ground, the forest rushing past in silver blur. The pack thundered behind her, Kale at her side, their strides matched as though they had always been one. For the first time in her life, Elara felt whole. No longer outcast. No longer half. The forest opened before her like a dream. Elara's paws struck the earth, sending vibrations up through her new form. Her body surged forward, muscles stretching with a strength she had never known. The night air streamed past, sharp with pine and cold with moonlight, filling her chest with exhilaration. Every sound was sharp now, crystalline. The rustle of leaves, the heartbeat of the earth beneath her, the chorus of wolves howling in rhythm around her. Every scent told a story. The musk of deer on the wind, the damp richness of moss, the sharp tang of stone. And beside her always Kale. The black wolf ran at her flank, massive and sure. His strides matched hers effortlessly, his blue eyes glinting whenever the moon caught them. She felt him in more than sight. Through the bond, his presence pulsed steady and strong, like a heartbeat outside her own. Run, his voice whispered in her mind. Not words exactly, but instinct translated into meaning. Run with me. And she did. They leapt fallen logs, splashed through streams, tore through undergrowth as though the forest bent to make way for them. The pack thundered behind and around them, silver and russet and gray streaks weaving through the night. Elara's howl burst from her throat, wild and free. The sound startled her, but then it filled her with a rush of joy. She wasn't alone. She was an outcast. Her voice was one among many, and the pack answered. Belonging, Kale's thought brushed hers through the bond, fierce and proud. Tears burned in her human heart, though her wolf eyes only gleamed. For the first time, the ache of loneliness inside her had gone quiet. They slowed only when the pack reached a ridge overlooking the valley. The wolves fanned out, panting, tongues lolling, their eyes bright with exhilaration. Elara padded to the edge, her paws crunching softly against the stone. The valley stretched below, silvered by moonlight. The settlement nestled safe within, the heart pool glowing faintly in the distance. She stood tall, chest heaving, the night air filling her lungs. Kale approached and brushed his muzzle against hers. Sparks flared through the bond, warm and electric. She felt his pride, his satisfaction, his quiet claim. You are mine. And I am yours. Elara's heart stuttered. She nuzzled back, instinct guiding her, and the bond deepened. Behind them the pack began to shift. Wolves rippled into human form, laughter rising as the exhilaration spilled into voices. A woman with tawny hair grinned at Elara, unguarded for the first time. A young man clapped another on the back, eyes shining. Acceptance. Tentative, fragile but real. Elara shifted too, the change startling but smoother than she expected. Her bones cracked, reshaping, her fur rippling away, and then she was standing naked in the moonlight, trembling, human again. Kale shifted beside her, his cloak appearing from the shadows as though the forest itself had draped it across his shoulders. Without a word, he stepped close and wrapped it around her. She met his gaze, her breath still ragged. That was... She searched for words and failed. Kale's lips curved faintly. The beginning. Her heart skipped. She wanted to protest, to question, to guard herself, but instead she only whispered, I've never felt anything like it. You weren't meant to, Kale said softly. His hand lingered on her shoulder, warm and steady. Until now. For the first time, Elara allowed herself to believe she might truly belong. Morning came with a hush that felt almost too peaceful. Elara woke in the dwelling Kale had given her, the pendant warm against her chest. Her body ached from the transformation, but it was a good ache, like muscles sore from use. She smiled faintly, stretching, remembering the run. The pups bounded in from the doorway, leaping onto her cot with yips of delight. She laughed, burying her face in their fur. They smelled of the forest and of safety. For once the world felt right. But the illusion didn't last. By midday the settlement buzzed with unease. Whispers spread, eyes darted. Wolves paced restlessly near the treeline, their ears pricked. Elara felt it too, the shift in the air, the tension threaded through the wind. Kale found her near the stream, his face harder than stone. Hunters have crossed the border. Her stomach dropped. Hunters. He nodded grimly. The same kind who killed the pup's mother. They track closer than they ever have. Too close. Elara's throat tightened. Because of me? Kale shook his head, but his jaw was tense. Because they grow bolder. They believe the forest belongs to them. And they have tasted wolf blood. She thought of the massive black wolf she had first seen watching her cottage. His sister. Dead at hunters' hands. Her chest ached. What will they do if they find this place? She whispered. Kale's blue eyes burned. They will try to destroy it. The weight of his words pressed heavy. She glanced at the pups who dozed nearby, oblivious. What can we do? Kale's expression softened briefly. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch lingered, steadying her even as dread coiled in her gut. We prepare, he said. And when the time comes we fight. The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. But Elara couldn't shake the image of blood staining the valley, of hunters' arrows piercing the wolves who had begun, hesitantly, to accept her. The pendant pulsed hot against her chest as though warning her. That night, as the pack gathered, the elders' voices rang clear. The forest remembers kindness, but it does not forgive intrusion. Shadows move beyond our borders. We must stand ready. Kale stood tall before them all, his voice fierce as he vowed to protect their people. The pack howled in answer, their unity shaking the ground beneath Elara's feet. She joined them, her own voice rising into the night, the wolf inside her crying out in defiance and strength. But in the shadows beyond the clearing, unseen eyes watched. Men with bows and blades. Hunters. The war between worlds had already begun. The forest has chosen Elara. But the shadows are moving closer. What do you think will happen when the hunters strike? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I love reading them. If you enjoyed this chapter of The Wolf King's Chosen, don't forget to hit that like button, share this with a friend who loves dark fantasy, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of Elara's journey. Until then, keep your eyes on the woods. You never know who might be watching.